Well, the NFL season is back, and that means your fantasy teams are being put to work. And I can tell you right now, for myself, I am not happy that I started Daniel Jones in my league. But I can tell you what I do like, and that is the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast. It's part of the Air It Out podcast network. It's hosted by longtime fantasy football players and friends, Joe and Chantel, and new episodes are released weekly. So every week you guys are going to be able to get an episode to get your fantasy fill, discussing all things fantasy football and everything noteworthy on the 2023 NFL season. And their highlight segment of the show is Show Up, Show Out, or a blank show. I think you know where I'm going with that, where they make specific player predictions and recommendations and discuss which players show up, show out, or are a complete crap show, for lack of a better word, for the week. And these guys are just getting started. Okay, so they're going to need some love from you guys. Check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, and much more. You can also follow and rate them. Click on the little alarm bell for notifications so you can see when new episodes are released. And you can also find them on Instagram on the Air It Out Network. Of course, the best way is on Apple and Spotify. But in the search, make sure you type in Air It Out FFL. You look for the red and black logo. That's where you'll be able to find them. Again, guys, Air It Out FFL, which is available on Apple and Spotify. Check out the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast.
This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE podcast.
The champ is the one that everybody wants, me. Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the WWE podcast. It's Sunday, September 10th, 2023. Feels like a long time since I've been on the show. I don't know why. Typically, it feels like maybe, a day since I've had a break and come back here. But this has felt like a really long one, and I don't know why that is. I do apologize. We didn't have a SmackDown review this week, but they'll be back next week. All right, so back next week, rocking and rolling on the regularly scheduled time. And don't forget to look out for that. And also look out for free trials, which are available on Patreon and Apple Podcasts 1 week for free on both. So you don't need to buy before you try before you buy. So, but speaking of which, Patreon. I know we got a lot of we've had a lot of new patrons and upgrades in their tiers, but I would like to give a shout out to a couple of new people that have joined us, and that is Jaden Perkins, welcome, and Push Bar to Open. Welcome. I'm not sure exactly. Well, I'll just use that because I'm not sure. Dustin, I think I gave you a shout out, but I'm giving you a shout out nonetheless again if I didn't. So check out Dustin, Push Bar to Open, and Jaden Perkins. Thank you everybody who has joined us over the last several days and gearing up for the inevitable slide to the end of the year. But really, I guess it's a slide in pro wrestling, but a slide that leads us into WrestleMania season. I know it sounds crazy to already be talking about, but there were a lot of hints this past week on SmackDown specifically that really alluded to a Survivor Series matchup in War Games, and we'll talk about that, as we get deeper into the show. But I don't think it's too early to start talking about it. Okay, it's certainly not, and I want you guys to think about it, because maybe this was a bit of a precursor or foreshadowing to Survivor Series. All right, well, we'll get there in a minute, but don't forget, guys, if you are thinking about joining us on Patreon, it's a good time to do it because we have an exclusive show going there that's going to be consistent, not hosted by me either. Anthony DeMarco this coming Friday is going to be starting the After Dark show exclusive to patrons on the SmackDown tier and above. So if you're interested in joining us though over there at Patreon, or you're already there and maybe want to upgrade, it's a good time to do it. And here's the other thing that we're going to start doing consistently on the SmackDown tier and higher to incentivize you even further and stress my life out even more with no time. So it's a trade-off here, is more consistent video. And what I mean by that is it's not going to be long form video from me. This is going to be kind of, 1, 2, 3 minutes, under 5 for sure, unless it's something crazy going on a much more regular basis. It's not going to be daily, but it'll be at least 1 or 2 times a week video. I'll pop on maybe from my studio, maybe from, my work, okay, on my break, or in my car. It could be various odd locations. So that's going to be my promise to you guys is, multi-week updates, and also the exclusive show for After Dark. Again, this is for the SmackDown tier and above. If you want to join us on the entry level for NXT, you can still do that and get every show we do ad-free, get access to the Discord server, be able to get a shout out on the show, and priority placement in the mailbag. So all that for $1, not bad. But if you want those other perks of video and the exclusive After Dark with Anthony DeMarco, which is an adult-only show that may not only be wrestling, then check out Patreon today. All right, then enough of the stuff that you guys want to push aside for most of you because you just want to talk wrestling, and I understand, I get it, but guys got to make a living here, so let's do it. Let's talk SmackDown. All right, since SmackDown has been completely ignored thus far on our podcast, I want to be able to dive into this a little bit further with SmackDown, and of course Raw, but SmackDown specifically. And the first thing that came to my mind after coming off, the first thing I was left with after the show went off the air is, man, that India show took some stars away. That India show, while it did produce some great content for India and for future events there and have a moment for John Cena and all that, it did take John Cena away from SmackDown. And it, for those of you in Boston, the TD Garden, my God, that's not a small market to not have John Cena there. I'm sure a lot of the kids and really everybody, not just the kids anymore, were disappointed, but he's coming from India. I mean, it's just not possible, right? Because that show was, that show aired Friday. And, of course, the show was Friday was the same day, the day before, I believe it was. So there's just no way he could have got back in time. So that being said, that's an unfortunate situation. But we did get a big promotion for next week. Cody's back next week on Raw. John Cena's back on next week on SmackDown. And so, we're also getting the Women's World Championship match on Raw next week. John Cena is coming back to the Grayson Waller effect on SmackDown next week. So next week seems to be kind of a return to normal business here as the stars return. But that was one impression I came off of. The other one is, and this is not and was not the focus of the show. Let's be honest, okay? But it was something that was a foreshadowing to not Survivor Series, but probably way beyond, is the interaction between Paul Heyman and LA Knight. The first time on camera that they were introduced to one another, their characters were. I really enjoyed it. Paul Heyman acting like the nice guy, acting like the courteous gentleman in the room, and then turning it to say, well, do yourself a favor. The next time you see me conducting business and I'm in here, he says, knock, like telling him what to do. And LA Knight just gets in his face and says, yeah, and walks away. I think he could have, it's fine. I wish he kind of snapped back at Paul a little bit more and wasn't so welcoming to shake his hand, but that's nitpicking. I thought the segment was a nice teaser of what's to come in the next maybe 6 months. It's not going to happen right away. It's not going to be something that is snap your fingers. Oh, they're alluding to it at Survivor Series. No. Fastlane. No. Okay. But it's nice to see. Right now, LA Knight is locked up with The Miz, and LA Knight is, I think, in a nice program with The Miz that I'm glad is also going to be ending next week. They're not waiting for Fastlane for that. And that makes sense. He kind of already jumped that hurdle, so he's going to jump it again on free TV, and he should, and then move on to his next real opponent. Now, the other thing is, and we'll get to the whole Austin Theory and Grayson Waller segment with LA Knight, but who is the one who's being traded from Raw to SmackDown? that is also the speculation running around, is since Jey was drafted inexplicably with Cody helping, makes no sense. They just wanted to give Cody the good feelings that fans have of seeing Jey and associate it with, oh, thank you, Cody. It's ridiculous, but he's there. So regardless of what the story tells us he's there for, he's there. And, you know, when I look at the Raw roster, which I'm pulling up right now, clicking through, you know, I'm trying to think of who would be an equivalent Jey Uso to Raw back to SmackDown trade. Who is that equivalent? And I got to run through some names here of who you guys think it could be. Right now, I think Braun Strowman could be a you know, in some schools of thought, an equivalent trade to SmackDown. Braun Strowman could definitely come to SmackDown. You know, if he's, I believe he might be injured. So he's a possibility. So think about Braun Strowman. We've got Matt Riddle. No. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, I think, are going to, for the time being, stay as a team. I think that's kind of it. Ricochet, I guess, could, but that's it. So you've got Ricochet, Sammy, or Kevin. Again, unlikely. And Braun Strowman really are it. Or, I mean, you could have Drew, but I think he needs to be competing for the world title, so I wouldn't touch Drew McIntyre and bring him to SmackDown. He's got a nice home on Raw, albeit with Riddle. It's still a nice move. So that's really it. So I think Braun Strowman's your guy if he's healthy. So that's my thought. But let's dive into it. Let's dive into a little bit more of SmackDown. And it started with a payback promo or recap video, which is nice. I like them showing, you know, what happened to remind us as our week erases our minds. It has that habit, doesn't it? But it started with a tag team match of Shotzi and Charlotte versus Iyo and Bayley. And this match went 9 minutes, and it was caused by, okay, well, Shotzi and Charlotte did win, but this is weird because this is the finish of the match. Bayley climbed the top rope, and Asuka caused a distraction, maybe that's a new word, by grabbing the title from Dakota Kai from the Timekeeper's area. Charlotte then knocked Iyo from the apron with a big boot, and Shotzi put Bayley down with a DDT for the win. Number one, I like DDTs being finishes. That's nice to see being brought back. Number two, why are we being distracted by things outside the ring as professionals? It's one of those things and this is not specific to this match. It's just it's been much more even than normal lately. It's been a company-wide, pro wrestling-wide decade problem. And this is not a problem that is very localized by any stretch. It's one that's, you know, it's frustrating from this perspective that we're watching professionals in the ring who get distracted, knowing that if you get distracted, you could lose the match, and the person outside the ring can't come in the ring, and if they do, the disqualification will likely be in your favor and you win. It's just a weird dynamic that the heels and baby faces in matches are still being distracted by what's outside the ring. I know. I guess I'm in the mood to complain, but it's not the only match that happened on tonight. However, Shotzi, or rather, after the match, Asuka confronted Iyo and held up the title in her face. And after the match, we saw Asuka actually use words. Hey, she knows the English language. Who the hell knew? And you know, her accent is very heavy. We know this. We've known for a long time her accent's heavy. But you know what the fans haven't known for a long time? Most of us that just watch her on WWE TV, not her Instagram or anywhere else, is that she knows more words than just nobody's ready for Asuka. Which, by the way, needs to be retired. Can she come up with something else? She has lost a lot of matches. So to say that no one's ready for Asuka it's like saying I'm undefeated. No. No, you're not. You've lost. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to, through the magic of editing, I'm going to pause this. You guys won't even know I'm pausing it. And I'm going to come back and give you the win-loss record in total for Asuka. Well, actually, here, I'm back. You didn't even know that. I cut it. That said, Asuka, this is just 2023, okay? She's had 43 matches, of which she's 27-14. She's lost 14 matches, 2 draws, and she has a 63% winning percentage. So that's she has, by the way, the most losses in 2023, I believe, out of any woman on the roster. And that's in 2023. Just 2023. So let's retire the nobody's ready for Asuka bit, can we? Anyway, I am excited for Asuka and Iyo Sky. That is a match that many of us have kind of been after for a while. And given their heritage, their lineage, right, you've been like, oh, I wonder how this is going to go. I'm excited for it from an in-ring perspective. And you know what? Even promo. I think they can. I think what they've done with the Shinsuke Nakamura and the success that we have found and seen from Shinsuke doing the backstage pre-taped promos that are subtitled but also perfectly produced, I think he has shattered the mold, finally, of what they do with stars that can't speak English or have an insanely heavy accent that they don't want that person with a live mic to be able to try to communicate with the crowd and cut a promo because they feel like it could be an impending disaster. And we've seen with Shinsuke that that's a false predetermined outcome. Because not that Asuka needs to do that exact format, but it's shown that people listen. I understand exactly what she said. You know? So I'm all for Asuka and Iyo Sky. Now, Iyo Sky does need a little work, okay? Let's be honest. When I say work, I mean credibility as a champion. Iyo Sky is not exactly a scary champion. She doesn't have the swagger of a champion. She's not a joke of a champion. That's not where I'm taking this. She just feels like it feels like WWE used the title to try to make her instead of her trying to make the belt. And it all comes down to the follow-up, too. They haven't done a lot with her. In fact, since she became champion, the focus has been taken off of her, which is, to say the least, disappointing. And sure, having the spotlight being put back on Bayley for a little bit, seeing her in the ring with Charlotte, it's a nice change other than her just being a mouthpiece. Great. But it's almost as if Iyo has been the third wheel in other stories going on. And she's the champion. So it's just a bit disappointing thus far, and maybe things will turn around for her, at least from a creative perspective, in the weeks and months ahead if she remains champion. All right, moving on. What happened next here? We then got Heyman backstage with AJ Styles. That's when the whole deal with Paul Heyman, by the way, continuing to use his earpiece to call Roman Reigns. Call Roman Reigns. Paul, for the love of God, if you're going to create the illusion of fake phone calls in 2023, when everyone in the world knows how to operate an iPhone, at least make it look like you're calling Roman Reigns properly. Hey, number one, not only is he speaking into his earpiece instead of the bottom of the phone, which I understand doesn't look as good, but at least it's accurate. You also can't just say to your phone, call, unless he's holding down the button that activates Siri on the iPhone. You don't just, like, I couldn't pick up my phone right now and say, call my dad. You have to say, hey, Siri. And then, that's what and I just activated my phone, of course, which is sitting right next to me. But that's how you do it. You have to say the magic words, the magic 2 words. And he doesn't do that. He just call Roman Reigns. Okay. The thing is, it's small and insignificant to a lot of you of like, who cares? But it happens every single time we see Paul Heyman. He's constantly saying to his phone to call Roman. If you're going to do it and do it that many times, for the love of God, just do it accurately. Sell me a little bit. Make me believe. I think it's total ignorance. They're just unaware that they're not even properly creating a fake phone call. Oh my God, it's too much. Jimmy attacked Seth. Jimmy attacked AJ backstage, and moving on. That set up the match between Jimmy and AJ for later in the night. Then we got Knight coming out, addressing his performance with the invisible John Cena on Raw, playing dress up the next week or whatever it was, and that he didn't need Cena's help or endorsement. He was respected what he accomplished at the end, but at the end of the day, he did count the 3. And Knight told Miz that he will force him to accept the bitter pill of defeat. And that's when Grayson Waller interrupted, and Waller rambled about absolutely nothing, and then brought out Austin Theory. And then Theory came out and told Miz he had already defeated Cena and Knight, and that when he was done with the Miz, done with him, Miz wouldn't waste his time. Knight responded and asked Waller and Theory if they were done boring everybody, and that would show those incels how to do this. He then spoke about the TD Garden being Legend's way, and he would kick Theory's 26-year-old keister, with everybody saying LA Knight. I don't dislike Austin Theory and Waller together. In fact, they kind of need one another. And I'm 100% behind LA Knight. I love this movement right now. He's a star that appeals to more than just a specific demo, which is why I think he's also so successful right now. Not only because he's talented on the microphone, talented in the ring, he's got a great look. He's, he is older than the typical up-and-coming star, no doubt, by about 15 years. But that's kind of what makes him appealing, is that he feels like kind of a mature star that's been here all along, and we're trying to get the most out of him right now. We see a star right now. And it's just, he isn't just Mr. Chain Gang appealing to, the prepubescent kids. That was super annoying as an Attitude Era fan with John Cena. He appeals to a wide range of people. I think that's one of the very positive things about him. And the only critique I could make is that some of these elementary insults, even Waller kind of said that on the commentary side of things. He does kind of make up names for people that, instead of insulting them specifically, he makes general insults where he just, he could say anything about, or he could call anybody those names. And it's instead him just like, dude, can you like hit him where it hurts? Bring up to Grayson Waller the fact that he hasn't won a match since he's been here. Right? Or since, if Austin Theory wants to talk about John Cena and WrestleMania, I would say, hey Theory, where's your career gone since WrestleMania? If that win was so big for you, what happened to your career? What happened to your title? I mean, maybe that's a little bit too fourth wall breaking, and WWE would perhaps get a little bit, peed off by that, but that would get the crowd going. That to me would hit him where it hurts. I'm like, if you want to hit the low-hanging fruit, it's right there, bro. And instead, LA Knight goes for it's like grade school names for these guys. Like the crotch chopper, or the crotch goblins or something. Like, funny if you use it every once in a while, or in addition to your main insult about their careers. So that's the only critique I have about it is, hit them with real stuff. Don't give them general, mom jokes. Like, your mom is so fat. When she sits around the house, she sits around the house. Like that kind of crap. Stuff you heard in, 8th grade on your bus ride home from school. That kind of stuff I would minimize. You can do it every once in a while. And The Rock, The Rock has called people popcorn farts, some really funny names. But that's just kind of the side show. That's not the meat and potatoes of what he should be focusing on. That's all. It's not really a complaint as it is an opportunity I see for him that he's missing. All right. We did get Austin Knight. Wow. That's a new name, huh? Maybe it's just he's with PJ McDonough somewhere, right? LA Knight and Austin Theory. Nice match here. 9 minutes seems to be kind of the magic number of the night here. And he was in control. Knight was in control when the commercial break ended. And then the action spilled outside the ring where Theory landed a snap suplex. And Waller jumped up on the apron and pulled the turnbuckle pad off. And Knight landed a power slam back in the ring. And that fired up the crowd. He landed an elbow drop with the LA Knight. Yeah. Waller got to the apron. And that offered a distraction. And it backfired as Theory nearly got shoved into the exposed turnbuckle. And he walked right into a BFT from Knight. He got the cover and the victory. 9 minutes. After that, Waller tried to sneak attack. But it was foiled. And Knight celebrated with the crowd. And so it was fine. Knight continued to get victories, racking them up, working with different talent. It's a smart move here by Triple H. Remember all the way back in, May, whatever it was, when we all wanted LA Knight to win the Money in the Bank. Oh my God, you got to win. He's got to win. Aren't all of us kind of happy he didn't, though? I know that we don't know the end game yet. But if I'm WWE, number one, they took the smart way on this. They didn't do a knee-jerk reaction. They said, you know what? If this movement is real, if this support for LA Knight is real, the fans are going to stick with him. And we're going to test the fans and push the fans and anger the fans. And do they stick with him or do they push him aside? So they tested the fans. And so far, I think the fans have passed in a big way. And now they are setting up LA Knight for a traditional bottom-up move. And it makes a trajectory, and I like that. You're getting to see him work with other talent that he hasn't worked before. Instead of going, to the top, cashing in, and he's champion, it's much better of a story to tell if he does things in a more traditional way. I'm not saying everything needs to be the same, but so far it's been great, I think. So, let's see. Now, then we got, where are we at here? Finn Balor and Damian Priest versus Butch and Ridge Holland. So I like the fact that they alluded to the Judgment Day being able to be, or rather, see, I got to clarify the whole fact that if you're an undisputed champion, you can be on either show. Specifically with the tag titles makes total sense. I still don't understand why there are two physical belts for one championship, but I'm not the one carrying them every day. So that makes sense for Finn and Damian. But explain to me why Dom is there again, though? Please? Why is Dom there again? I don't understand that. So I guess, we're supposed to brush that part off. That the brand split doesn't, or only applies to those that are undisputed champion. But if you're associated with the group, suddenly by extension, you're also included in being able to come over. This is where, again, if a draft actually was enforced, Dom would not be there. So, however, Butch and Ridge coming out here, boy, did they get a kind of a deflating reaction after a ton of heat for Dominic, which they were trying to set the table for Butch and Ridge here. I mean, they did everything they could to elicit a heat reaction from the crowd in TD, and they succeeded. But when a babyface came out to interrupt, they went, oh, Butch and Ridge Holland. I'm sure some people were going, huh? It was a kind of very lukewarm reaction for Butch and Ridge. No boos, just air let out of the building of that. All that heat was built up for these two. However, I thought the match was good. And you know what? Hearing Ridge on the mic is actually a nice thing once in a while. He's usually the silent type, kind of like Dakota Kai in Damage Control. He doesn't say anything. So this match ended with Damian and Finn beating Ridge and Butch, as they should. And then we got a big surprise after this match. But we're going to take a quick break for the sponsor of today's episode. And we'll come back with more SmackDown and a little Raw right after this. Well, the NFL season is back, and that means your fantasy teams are being put to work. And I can tell you right now, for myself, I am not happy that I started Daniel Jones in my league. But I can tell you what I do like, and that is the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast. It's part of the Air It Out podcast network. It's hosted by longtime fantasy football players and friends, Joe and Chantel, and new episodes are released weekly. So every week you guys are going to be able to get an episode to get your fantasy fill, discussing all things fantasy football and everything noteworthy on the 2023 NFL season. And their highlight segment of the show is Show Up, Show Out, or a blank show. Like, you know where I'm going with that, where they make specific player predictions and recommendations and discuss which players show up, show out, or are a complete crap show, for lack of a better word, for the week. And these guys are just getting started. Okay, so they're going to need some love from you guys. Check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, and much more. You can also follow and rate them. Click on the little alarm bell for notifications so you can see when new episodes are released. And you can also find them on Instagram on the Air It Out Network. Of course, the best way is on Apple and Spotify. But in the search, make sure you type in Air It Out FFL. You look for the red and black logo. That's where you'll be able to find them. Again, guys, Air It Out FFL, which is available on Apple and Spotify. Check out the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast. All right, welcome back, everybody. So let's talk about what happened after the match. Who confronted Finn and Damian? Well, that would be this yet-to-be-named group of Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits walking down to the ring. And he got in the face of Priest and said that while he's right that the bloodline is crumbling, it won't be Judgment Day taking over. It will be them. So a lot of shots being thrown around to the bloodline from Judgment Day, but also this, I'll just call them the Hurt Business 2.0, which that's not the official name. It's the name I'm just giving them to shorten it. Is they are shooting shots at the Judgment Day, but the Judgment Day are shooting shots presumably at the bloodline that's crumbling. However, I think what they're doing here is potentially setting up a Survivor Series War Games match in about a month and a half or 2 months' time here. And that match could be a Bloodline and Judgment Day alliance versus Bobby Lashley, the Street Profits, Kevin and Sammy, and another opponent or another ally. So maybe Seth, perhaps Seth. It's a thought. Seth and Roman in the match. I keep harping on that for the last 2 years, but that's my thought, guys. That's probably what they're doing here, especially with Bobby and the Street Profits that have been established firmly into the babyface role. It's good to see them in that role. The crowd gave them a much warmer, although not explosive, response coming out to confront the Judgment Day. That was nice. But the match here, by the way, the match was solid. Again, I know I say that a lot, but I only give you the ending of the match because that's what most people want to know what happened. But unless there's something interesting that happened in the middle of the match, I'm not going to dive into, the nitty gritty of it. I'll leave other podcasts to do that. I also don't want to sound like I'm discounting what they do in the ring. I just, I don't want to have this podcast be 4 hours. So, okay. Then we got AJ Styles and Jimmy Uso. This match was a longer one, 15 minutes and 43 seconds. This one also was the third one of the night, ended in a distraction by silently getting attention from Styles. Jimmy then knocked Styles off the turnbuckle and choked him on the ropes. Styles rolled to the floor, and Solo refused to attack him and turned his back. AJ kicked Solo in the back of the head. He then shoved Jimmy into the ring post and then landed a phenomenal forearm to get the victory. After the match, AJ tried to get out of there to avoid Solo, but was attacked by Damian and Finn, who dumped him back into the ring so Solo could land a Samoan spike. Solo stared down a smiling Priest and Balor to close the show. I was waiting for like Cody Rhodes, Mr. has his hands in everything, to come out and make the save. He'll probably be in that War Games match to face off against Roman and tease part 2 for WrestleMania if The Rock's not there, right? So, Mr. Bleach Blonde will be in, 3 different programs, making sure that all the heels aren't outnumbering the good guys and doing weird political deals and things he shouldn't even have his hands into. But nonetheless, this was interesting that Damian and Finn, while they were taking shots at the Judgment Days, earlier and in prior weeks, they appeared to help out the bloodline here, what's left of the bloodline. They appear to help them out and rolling AJ back into the ring, giving them, allowing Solo to hit the Samoan spike and so forth. But there's no way that the bloodline and Judgment Day are going to go at it. Unless they're trying to turn a whole group heel or a babyface. It doesn't make any sense to me. They might tease some tension. It's fun to think about. But I don't think anybody really wants to see, at this juncture, Judgment Day versus Bloodline, especially Bloodline in its weakened state. No Roman. We haven't seen Roman in, I feel like, 2 months. And I know presumably he was injured after his previous match with Jey. But luckily his schedule, with how often he's out, it's already built. He's built an injury recovery schedule without even realizing he's built an injury recovery schedule. That's how often he's off. But, I just don't think we're going to get a Judgment Day Bloodline program. Heel. It doesn't make a ton of sense. Not yet, unless they're trying to turn people babyface. So, this is going to be a setup for a temporary alliance between Judgment Day and Bloodline. That's my thought. All right, quickly over to Raw. As we remember what happened many moons ago on Raw, which always feels like a jillion years ago. And I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. And the matches, anyway, are Drew and Matt Riddle versus the Viking Raiders, Eric Ivar, and in a Tornado Tag Team match. This one was Kingston accidentally hitting Riddle, and it allowed Eric to cover Riddle to get the 3 count. Tension is rising between New Day and Riddle and Drew. Many people believing that this could lead to a Drew heel turn. I hope so. I don't care if it's the New Day that does it. I don't care how it's happening or how it happens. Drew needs to turn heel. He just does. But, we'll see. A lot of promotion throughout the show of the Intercontinental Champions of the past. Perfect. Loved it. Added much more value to the belt. I don't know how you can add much more, but it continued to remind you of what Gunther's going to do here later in the show. And Nakamura rejecting Seth, trying to give him a title match was weird. I know one of the listeners brought that up. I'm glad they did. And then the mailbag segment of the podcast this week, it was weird that you have to shove a title match down someone's throat. How does that work? That was weird. But I still enjoy Shinsuke and Seth, and I'm looking forward to their matchup that's yet unannounced at Fastlane. But he did face off, Shinsuke that is, against Ricochet. And Shinsuke did lose or win. I'm sorry. Ricochet did beat Nakamura by DQ in 9 minutes and 35 seconds, but it's because we had Nakamura slamming a chair over the back of Ricochet and just wanting to hurt him. We then had Shinsuke try to use the chair to break the neck of Ricochet. Loved that, actually. What else? JD McDonough came out during the promo with Judgment Day and gave Priest the new Send Your Money in the Bank briefcase. I've told you my theory on that. And let's see. Piper Niven. Oh, I didn't mention this on Raw, but Pierce did mention that Piper Niven was not medically cleared. So Piper Niven, Dewdrop to those of you that remember, is not medically cleared yet, but she's still active, but does have an injury, I guess. And we did get Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark, though, on the women's side of things. Shayna Baszler beat Zoe Stark in 8 minutes and 50 seconds. And then they fist bumped after that. So Shayna beat Zoe, but then they fist bumped. So they are likely going to be partners. Sure. Chelsea Green versus Raquel Rodriguez. This was a crazy fast match. Raquel did beat Chelsea in 1 minute 40 seconds and then announced that she would be facing Ripley for the championship next week, which is, by the time you're listening to this, either tonight or tomorrow night, depending on when you're listening, or it could have already happened. We did get, let's see, The Miz talking about LA Knight again in a promo and the empty chair and the whole Invisible John Cena deal. The next match was Sami Zayn versus JD McDonough, with JD defeating Sami in 8 minutes. And then Zayn attacked Dom after the match. Zayn in this was hell-bent on getting a haluva kick on someone. And it eventually ended up being on JD McDonough. Because Zayn is trying to get Dom, but Dom keeps sliding away, so... All right. Gunther versus Chad Gable IC title. 15 minutes and 50 seconds. Gunther beat Gable. Another really good match here. No issues. And the shot of his children, Gable's children or daughter crying, was just gold. I think it was authentic by his daughter. And Gunther is now officially the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. Hell of an accomplishment. Great job by WWE promoting this. The matches that were the series of matches that Gable and Gunther had should be commended and applauded. I hope for Gable's sake, coming out of this, that he's not one and done here, or 3 and done in this case. I hope he continues to build on the support, on the respect that the fans have for him, and he doesn't go back to being this ridiculous sidekick, or rather kind of side comedy piece that WWE often views him as. And I just hope it leads to bigger and better things for Gable, because we know he's capable of them. The shoosh thing is cute. A thank you, all that. Those are kind of offshoots of a different time in his career that, as successful as they are, I hope if they decide to ever put any kind of support rocket behind him, that they actually, they evolve from that, because you can't have a character that has evolved into this wrestling machine in the ring that we've seen the last month, but also doing the, all the shoosh stuff. And it's not that it'll kill his career. I think it's just stifling it a bit, because those are two different eras of his career. That's all. It's not an absolute must. I just think eventually those branches are going to stop producing fruit, and I think it's close, and he needs to evolve into something else that the fans can take more serious, if WWE is going to take him more seriously. If they're not, then sure, him promoting those catchphrases are printing money for him, because they put them on t-shirts and people buy them. So there is that. I understand that too. There's the money aspect of it. But, well, I'm sure that many of you out there are looking forward to this week in wrestling, as we have a lot of big returns. We have a lot of interesting segments. We're getting closer to Fastlane, which is on October 7th. So doesn't feel like it doesn't feel close, does it? It's still about a month away, and it'll go fast. It will, I promise. Always does. You're like, oh my God, 4 weeks. You turn around and it's next week every time. So have no fear. Time will pass you by. So that is it for me tonight, guys. It feels good to be back again. And for some reason, this past few days have felt like a week or two. It feels like I've abandoned you, and now I'm back. Daddy's home, guys. Daddy's home. So, all right, things are getting creepy. I'm going to end it here. It is Sunday, September 10th, guys, just in case you forgot. But if your fantasy teams are suffering like mine are and you want to throw your phone across the room, well, you can join me in doing that. But also our sponsor of today's episode, which you'll hear again in just a little bit, will help you out and help alleviate those frustrations. But before I go, you guys can go ad-free on Patreon. Don't forget, major perks on Patreon, SmackDown Tier and Higher, at patreon.com/WWE podcast or on WWEpodcast.com. You can go ad-free there, WWEpodcastshop.com for all your merch, and also on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget about Apple Podcasts, guys. Great place to go if you already have Apple, and you just click that subscribe button and you're in. Ad-free. No issues, no worries, no problems. No shirt, no shoes, no problem, right? All right. Yeah, it's getting weird. I'm out of here. Thanks, everybody, for listening. As always, take care. I'll talk to you next time. Well, the NFL season is back, and that means your fantasy teams are being put to work. And I can tell you right now, for myself, I am not happy that I started Daniel Jones in my league. But I can tell you what I do like, and that is the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast. It's part of the Air It Out podcast network. It's hosted by longtime fantasy football players and friends, Joe and Chantel. And new episodes are released weekly. So every week you guys are going to be able to get an episode to get your fantasy fill, discussing all things fantasy football and everything noteworthy on the 2023 NFL season. And their highlight segment of the show is Show Up, Show Out, or a blank show. Like, you know where I'm going with that, where they make specific player predictions and recommendations and discuss which players show up, show out, or are a complete crap show, for lack of a better word, for the week. And these guys are just getting started, okay? So they're going to need some love from you guys. Check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, and much more. You can also follow and rate them. Click on the little alarm bell for notifications so you can see when new episodes are released. And you can also find them on Instagram on the Air It Out Network. Of course, the best way is on Apple and Spotify, but in the search, make sure you type in Air It Out FFL. You look for the red and black logo. That's where you'll be able to find them. Again, guys, Air It Out FFL, which is available on Apple and Spotify. Check out the Air It Out Fantasy Football League podcast.
Thanks for listening to the WWE podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.